Into our next session now, CMO conversations, and our very own Tommy Alicia will be moderating this panel, but I will give a little introduction first about what this session is all about and our guest speakers. So Chief Marketing Officer, a title that holds more responsibility now than ever. The Chief Marketing Officer is the steward for a brand's identity, playing a decisive role in who a brand targets and how to craft messaging to resonate with that target consumer. In our CMO conversation session, we'll hear from two marketing vanguards from two highly successful brands who have put diversity and inclusion at the forefront of brand strategy. Our moderator for this session is Tommy Alicia, a product developer, brand designer, and beauty educator. She is passionate about helping, humoring, and healing her community by creating products for multicultural audiences and hosting an eponymous YouTube channel. Tommy is currently the creative director for Natural, a fresh and frozen natural hair care brand based in Philadelphia. There, she leads multidisciplinary teams focused on all touch points, including web, product, packaging, copy, and beyond. As for our panelists, Sarah Curtis Henry is the Chief Marketing Officer of Tatcha, working alongside founder Vicky Tsai, leading all things marketing, creative, and e-commerce. An industry veteran, Sarah has held multiple marketing and trade leadership positions during her time in beauty, and most recently, she spent over 6 years at LVMH in a variety of high-level roles, and prior to that, several executive director roles at the Estee Lauder Companies. Currently the Chief Marketing Officer for Selena Gomez's Rare Beauty, Katie Welch is a creative thinker and brand storyteller with more than 20 years of marketing experience. An innovative thought leader, Katie has continually pushed the envelope while working with globally respected beauty brands, including Hourglass, Bliss, Elmis, Burt's Bees, and Unilever. Please welcome all these ladies to the event.
I think we actually may pause for 1 second because Sarah may have dropped off unless I'm just missing her. I see Katie. How are you, Katie? Thank you. Here she is. Hi, Sarah. How are you? Your video was off. Okay. Did you hear your wonderful introduction?
Thank you so much.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Okay. We'll get started.
Take it away. Hello, 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 everyone. So excited to be amongst you all today. My name is Tommy Alicia, and as Nanette mentioned, I am the creative director of Natural and a proud member of 25 BWB. I'm so happy to introduce Katie and Sarah. This is a wonderful first point of access to the women and the leaders behind these brands. They control the market, and their biographies are truly amazing, and I highly recommend that we all give them a look. Thank you, ladies, for your wonderful work. So let's hop into it here because there are a few exciting questions that I think we would love to get answered by you all. So starting off with number one, what is the role of a CMO and how do you see it evolving? I'll start with Katie.
Okay, and thank you. First of all, thank you so much to Ella for having me. Thank you, Nana, for the great introduction. And Sarah, I'm so excited to be on a panel with you. I wish we were in person because I followed your career for years. So I feel really honored to be next to you on this virtual. So first, thanks and foremost, thank you so much for having me. So what is the role of the CMO? And I think what's cool about looking at Sarah's background versus my background, we've both had different career trajectories and how we got to this position. But what's unique about it, you have to be creative and you have to be strategic, but you have to be thoughtful. And I do think, and I'm curious what Sarah thinks, because when we first started our careers, 20 years ago, marketing was different. You could be a CMO and maybe you didn't have to be creative or thoughtful, which is scary, but the marketing landscape was so fundamentally different that you could push out a message. You could have an ad campaign that you would just flip the switch and you had millions of dollars. And next thing you know, everyone saw your message or consumed your message. And that's just not the way people interact these days. And when you think about someone's attention span, that's the most valuable thing that a brand wants to go at, like that a brand can, you kind of interrupt their attention span back, basically. And how you figure out how to get there, how to market that way, That's hard and that's different. And so that's why I think the role of the CMO has changed so much, because it's not about just simply, sure, you could have all the budget in the world, but your marketing messages and your campaign may not break through. So that's, the role has to truly be a steward, but in a way that's both thoughtful, creative, and strategic.
That was wonderful. And I completely agree. Sarah, what are your thoughts on it?
Hi, Katie. Nice to meet you virtually as well. And I can't wait to meet you in person. I love what you said. I think that the CMO role has changed so much, even since I joined the industry some time ago. You know, it's funny because in CMO is the word marketing, but I actually find the role to be a broader role. You know, you're often sitting in a very strategic seat at a brand level. You're looking cross-functionally. Of course, you have sort of the marketing world, and that might go from innovation. So I call that concept all the way to market, you know, from figuring out like what products should we have in our pipeline, working with founders, working with product development, all the way to how are we going to launch, to Katie's point, and break through once we're in the market. So that part of the role certainly still exists, but you're often thinking broadly about topics like how do we expand the presence of our brand, you know, within a market or globally. That's something that I am very, you know, intimately involved with. Or, you know, thinking of, there's P&L involved, there's a finance side to what we do that really requires cross-functional partnership. There's, you know, a passion that you have to have for consumers. I think Katie's point around, there was a time where you tailored a message, you created an aspirational image, and you sort of put it out there with a lot of money and waited for the people to come. You know, those days are gone. Being a CMO is a co-creation role. You know, you really have to have a passion for consumers. You have to have your ear to the ground. You have to have a sense for the trends beyond kind of what, you know, you're reading in research reports, and you really have to have a deep sense for your brand. I think with all of the great brands that are out there and how competitive the field is, if you don't understand intently the purpose of your brand, why do you exist? What consumers do you seek to serve? How do you connect with them in deep ways with messages and content that's tailored to not only your consumer, but the different platforms that you exist on? If you don't do that as a brand, then essentially you're just sort of lost out in the sea, you know, chasing any and everything that comes, you know, from a trend perspective. And so I think today being a CMO requires an intense focus on brand, sharpening that, really understanding who your consumer is today, who you want them to be, and then really having a customized approach to going after it. But thinking with a big business mind, it's not, you know, functional role anymore. It's very much a cross-functional role.
Yeah, I want to add to that too, because I think the other thing is that, and you can see this happening with brands, you're sort of what Sarah said about chasing these different things. There's so many things you can do. There's so many tactics, but if she hit the nail on the head, like if you don't know what your brand's purpose is, their why, and that doesn't matter how big your brand is, if you're Dove or if you're a startup, like what's your reason for being? Why does this brand exist? What's your mission? What's your vision? If you don't understand that at its core, and there's so many things coming up, then you could just start to do any sort of tactic, and then you're just chasing these things. I mean, look at how much has changed just in the last year. There's Clubhouse, there's TikTok, there's, you know, IG stories, there's IG shopping, and it's just, sure. And I'm sure everyone, and we get this all the time, you know, there's everyone also in the company thinks that they too can do marketing now because they have an Instagram account. And so we're constantly talking to people and saying, hold up, you know, does this make sense? Is this strategically aligned with this brand? Is it achieving the objective and the job that we need to do? Otherwise, you have just like tactic soup, you know, and it's just all of the things, and nothing is clicking, because you need to have that through line. It's the sum of the parts are what's going to break through. So I think that's relevant and really exciting for startup brands and for small brands, because if you get that why right and you leverage the right platforms to capture your community's attention, there's opportunities for every brand of every size.
That's so true. And I really loved what you both said about keeping your ear to the ground, but also being thoughtful and keeping your brand's why and your brand ethos at the forefront. So with that being said, how are you doing this, and how are you doing this with the adapting marketing to the demands of the changing demographic and the wants and the needs of the consumer?
You know, I think it's you take steps towards it every day. I think it has to be sort of at the heart of the brand. It has to be at the heart of your team. I think no matter where your brand is coming from, right? Like every brand was started at a different time for a different purpose by a different set of founders. But ultimately, every brand should exist to serve, the world that we live in the way that it exists today, right? So it shouldn't matter kind of where your brand is coming from and what might have been the nature of the time that you started in. It's literally, if you want to exist as a brand, our founder, Vicky, says that she always developed Tatcha with the next 100 years in mind. That means that a brand is not a static sort of sum of parts. You really, I think you have to exist to serve all types of beautiful, all shades of beautiful. And ultimately what that means is that it has to be reflected within your team. It has to be reflected in front of the camera, but it's not just about images and sort of saying, and being, performative and saying, okay, look, this is what we mean. But it really means sort of in every decision that you make, thinking about, the broader consumer and what's in their interest. I think that's why I mentioned co-creation and why it's so important, that you can't do that. Even if you have the most diverse team in the world and you are, a brand that has that at its very core, if you aren't co-creating with your consumer every day, listening to what their needs are, listening to what they want, creating with them in mind. So that means in our world, social listening is incredibly important. One thing that we do at Tatcha is that every Monday, we read letters from our consumers. We have a team that's dedicated to that, and they read letters, and some of them are positive, and some of them are opportunity letters, if just to put it lightly. But we listen to all of that feedback. We look and we read every single comment that comes through in social media. We respond to everyone because there's a lot of rich learning that comes out of that. So again, if you exist to serve all types of beautiful and all shades of beautiful, that means that you have to co-create your community. You have to let them in behind the scenes, and you have to show that, in front of camera as well. And I think, all brands are a work in progress in that regard, but you have to have good intent followed by action to make that happen.
Yeah, I love that, Sarah. We, consumers are leaning into their own personal values now more than ever. So with that, they're looking to brands to have values or to showcase their values, walk their values, something more than having it in the about section of their website, something more to having it than on the back of a business card. Like, how can you really walk the walk and as much as you talk the talk, right? One thing that we do when we started Rare Beauty, something that was very near and dear to Selena is to her community. And she said, I want to start this brand, not just for my community, but with them. And she looked to us and she said, what can we do? How can we do that? So, and I'll make this quick. We had this big idea pre-COVID to do I love Sarah's word, to co-create a marketing campaign with our community. And we did a casting call, but we called it a community call because it wasn't about what you looked like. It was about your story. Rare Beauty is all about sharing your story. So we asked people to share their story, why they were rare. And then ultimately we were going to fly people to LA to be a part of a campaign. And I was like, that's so awesome. Because then, yes, of course, it's a cool marketing campaign, meet the marketer, but really, like, how great to be able to create connection and community and friendships amongst our community because they would meet one another. Well, fast forward, we certainly weren't going to do that. It was supposed to be held in March and that wouldn't have been safe. So the whole thing got postponed. However, we had to do something. So instead, in lieu of flying everyone to LA, we still had this list of individuals who wanted to connect and sought that connection. So we've been hosting weekly chats on with our Rare Beauty community via Zoom. And sometimes they're small, sometimes they're as small as 8 people, sometimes they're 15 people, but we've gotten to know them. So just the way Sarah said she's listening, it is social listening. We know our community's faces, are their names. So not just, and it's not about like, hey, can you help us shade, like what's the next color of the lipstick? But instead it's, what do you want to hear from this brand? What can we help? I haven't mentioned this, but our brand purpose ladders back to mental health. And so they said to us, we want to know trusted resources of mental health because we're a beauty brand. So we've aligned with a mental health council with professionals in the medical field, in education and within mental health to help guide our brand messaging so that we can put out messages and resources to our community because they asked for it. And we knew that because we listened to them. So I think because of the changing demographic, that's what we did. We got in there with them. And what's cool is I'm watching friendships and connection happen amongst our community, because especially now in COVID, when we're all stuck in our homes or apartments or whatever, rooms alone, you're feeling more lonely than ever before, and connection is paramount. So if we as a brand can actually connect to people, and if there's a kid in his bedroom and he's putting on makeup and he doesn't feel like he has anyone to chat with, and then now just because of our rare chat, we've introduced him to somebody else and now they're friends, like that's awesome. So if we can do that as a brand, that's what we've been sort of leaning into, the human side of the brand as much as a brand can, because I do realize that that sounds like you're still a brand trying to sell makeup.
But you know what? I think that that's important, because I think brands are living and breathing organisms, right? Because by nature of that, and I think it's interesting, Katie, because when we use the word brand and then we say human, and it's like, it's sort of the balance between the two. But ultimately, there are people behind brands, and our consumers demand that brands step up in ways, in bigger ways than they ever have. You actually made me think about sort of early days of COVID. And at Tatcha, we were figuring out the world for ourselves. We were all personally sort of in the whirlwind of, what does this all mean? What happened? Our whole world just got turned upside down, not to even, mention what it meant for us as a company. And what we decided, in many instances post-COVID, was to focus on being of service to our community, to unplug marketing in the traditional sense and just be there to listen to people, to be inspiring and to be uplifting. And it wasn't about being commercial, it was about being of service to our community. And I have seen and have loved to see brands lean into purpose so much more. And some brands have had it, at the heart from the very beginning, like a Rare, like a Tatcha, where Vicky's been committed to education since the very beginning. But ultimately, it's causing other brands to step up, because ultimately it's like, what are you doing sort of with that success? And how are you lifting the broader community with the success of your brand? How are you giving back? And ultimately consumers are holding us to the task on that we really have to take sort of what they're giving us and we have to give it back tenfold. And so I think that point, Katie, is really important, that it's not a nice to have, it is a must have. And as CMOs, it's something that is top of mind for us always, in terms of sustainability is not just about your packaging, it's literally about how you are giving back to the community that is giving you so much.
And every brand can have their own, like that's, and you don't want it to feel like a charitable add-on or just a corporate philanthropy. I mean, that sounds to me like, first of all, that sounds like something that could get cut in a budget cut. But if it's born from its core, like our two brands, but every brand can still figure it out. It has to be true to their mission, their vision, and values. And then what are those values? And then how do you bring those to life? I do believe that every brand can have an impact in some form or fashion. And that it is up to, back to your first question, the changing role of the chief marketing officer. It's up to us to steward that. And not only to the consumers, but then back to our yes, of course, our social community, our customers, but also our retailers and our team, our employees, making sure that the company is doing what they say they're doing.
I really, really, really love that you all are doing this social listening, doing the work of it. It is real work and it needs to be done. And you're answering the basically the call to action of your audience. And so I'm wondering, well, actually you're doing that in addition to the work of the Tatcha's Girls Education Program and Rare's Impact Fund. So this is in addition to, like you said, this isn't something that's going to get kicked out with a budget cut. So this is true to you, not new to you. So I just love that.
Love that, Kobe. Love it.
And so I'm wondering, it sounds like you're already doing this work of inclusive and conscious beauty, but how are you, in addition to those programs, how else are you addressing inclusion and consciousness? Because that seems like the new battle cry of the beauty industry.
So it's interesting that you bring that up. I think it's been very interesting for me, as an African American woman and a CMO, sitting in the seat that I'm in over the last year. It's been encouraging in so many ways. I've been in this industry for a long time, and that battle cry has always been there, but ultimately it's at a fever pitch now. And I think it was really important for me, sitting in the seat that I'm in, especially sort of in the middle of the year when the racial injustice protests were happening and, brands were posting and, putting plans together on, this is how we plan to show up and address this. It was really important to me in the leadership seat to make sure that what we did and what we do is about the long term, and that it's about immediate, and that it's not performative, and that we want to put things in place that really are going to make the difference over the long term and sustain. And so we showed up when the pull up call to action came in terms of what we have going on behind the scenes and what it looks like for us from an executive perspective, because we know I'm fortunate to be in the seat that I'm in, but it's not about exceptionalism. It's about making sure that when you open the door, you're able to swing it wide open for others. And I think that's something that's really driven me since I've been in this industry, because I have been in many instances one and only in the room. And that's not a comfortable seat to be in. You try to occupy that seat, you try to sit in that seat and use it and make your community proud. But ultimately, it's not enough to be the only person in that seat. So that's something that I really hold on my shoulders, whether it's a big company or a small company. How can I use my power? And I call on others in the industry, whether they are, Black or not, to use their power to open the door to support inclusion within their teams, inclusion of all kinds within their teams, because it's really important, because we have to sort of show up as the consumer that we seek to serve. If we're out there saying, well, I want, the disposable income of the Black community, but you don't have anyone Black on your team, or you're putting forth, that's problematic. And it's, all about, trying, just recognizing it and trying to address it. I think when it comes to sort of the, creative side of the house, that's something that, every brand kind of looks to make sure, are we really representing, diverse imagery that represents our community, whether it's the models that you select or the creators that we choose to work with and influencers that we put their content forward. We always have that thinking at the forefront, and being in the room allows me to influence that in a way. But I feel fortunate because I have a team that gets it. Whether I was in the room or not, I feel fortunate to be surrounded by people that are championing inclusivity, that represent inclusivity in every way, because it's not about the one person or the exceptionalism. It's about having people in the room that have shared values. And so I think that's the piece. It's not only do you have, the rainbow in every single way, but do you have shared values in terms of what you choose to achieve? And are you thinking about inclusion at every step of the process, from concept to market to purpose to how you show up every day? So that's how I see the world, and how we see the world.
I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Katie.
Sarah, I love what you said about that. It rests on all of us, everyone in the team, to have those shared values. And I feel very fortunate to be at Rare Beauty, where we do have those shared values. And because it can't all rest on one person as the chief marketing officer. And I'm proud of everything that we have, what we have done, what we have put out into the world, whether it is an inclusive range of shades, from concealers to foundations, the images that we put out in the market. But it's more than that, because brands must do that. What I love and this is just one small example, but we're telling stories. I said that Rare Beauty was all about stories. We love sharing why people are rare. So we don't just repost a creator or repost a member of our community member, but we like to take it a step further and hear from them, because they're a human, they're a person, they're much more than the face with the beautiful makeup on. But so what is there? And then whatever the theme is of the week that we're talking about. So why are they rare, but maybe it's something about what are they grateful for? Or during Black History Month, we talked about what being a Black woman means to this individual, or actually 3 members of our team spoke and created posts and talked about what it means to be Black for them. And so I think the fact that I hope I'm not going to speak for anyone. I hope that the fact that we have an environment with which they can, anyone, any individual, in light of the recent hate crimes against Asian Americans, a few of the Asian women on our team came forward and they posted their experiences. And so it's about creating the environment for your team to feel supported, to come forward with ideas that they want to go to market with concepts they want to tell on social, with environments that they could share for whatever they would like to do to make the work environment the type of environment that someone wants to go to work at every single day. And back to your first question, my favorite question, the changing role of the CMO, like we have to steward that and we have to make sure that we're doing that. And that I'm proud to be in an environment that, because I am a Caucasian white woman. I don't know what it feels like, but I sure as hell am going to listen and try and find out and then see what I can do to make sure that we're communicating what we need to communicate. The other thing that I thought, I wish I could report back what happened, but I was not involved. So we did a rare chat 2 weeks ago in celebration of Black History Month, and it was the Black employees at Rare Beauty ran it with Black members of the community, as well as a woman from our Rare Beauty Mental Health Council. And they talked about what it means to be Black in America. And I have heard that it was wonderful and awesome, but and I just want to be able to provide experiences like that as much as possible.
That is like music to my ears. That's so sweet to hear that you guys are creating stages and platforms, outside of our wonderful 25 BWB community, but that there are these conversations happening in other areas. So that kind of goes into my next question, which is I want to hear both of your thoughts on Black women and the future of beauty.
Ooh. That's a big, great question.
Yeah, well, Sarah, you know much more about it than I do. However, all I know is, there's clearly an issue with diversity in this industry. What can we, and I love what Sarah said earlier, that the onus is on all of us. So what can we do to help people? I love saying that I have a non-traditional path to CMO. And I think what's so important about all of us at sort of an executive, as executives in beauty, we need to share our paths. Because if people don't see that this path is possible, how do you know to go after it? And because I was thinking a lot about how I got into beauty. And I met one person when I was 18 years old, and I saw that she had this career, and I was like, I love beauty. I want to do that. That's exactly what I want to do. And then the rest is history. And I figured out my way in. I'm from Missouri. Like I didn't live in New York. I didn't have an aunt who, was where anyway. So I've been thinking about that. And I started a TikTok account. Just bear with me. There's no dances happening. But because I was like, how are kids, and this is just starting with kids. This isn't, I would also like to mentor executives, but how are kids paying attention? Well, they're paying attention on TikTok. So I started this account because I thought, if I could share what I've learned, the way I met that one person, and if one person, scrolling through saw some information that helped him or her then lead them to a LinkedIn post or a Facebook group where you could find a job, like that's doing something beyond just taking interviews of someone who is related to someone. And no. So I started this TikTok account and it took off. I think it took off. I don't know. There's people who have much more followers than I do, honestly. And I've been mentoring men and women off the app on the side, 30 minutes a day. And it's so interesting because these kids are like, well, I just don't have anyone to talk to about this. I don't even want to talk about my resume, or like, I want to work in beauty, but what does that mean? Because what does it mean to work in beauty? Like, you can go marketing, but think of all the paths. We know you can go in finance, operations, HR, PR, product development, regulatory. Like, there's so many paths, but unless you know someone or you see that path, you're not going to know how to go after it. So I'm trying to do that. And I'm trying to showcase as many paths as possible so that it can inspire someone. And it's been so awesome because I'm now, like, the flip is happening and I'm learning from them. And okay, so I've learned how to do TikTok, which I'll admit for a 43-year-old, I'm happy that I learned that. However, like I learned they're so inspiring. And they're just, I don't know, it's just been awesome. So I would like my example to be for other executives in beauty or other industries to just like talk to other people, new people outside your circle, whomever, however, because that's how we can, because the onus all rests on all of us. And everyone has the power to do that, to network and get people to help, just help. You know, it's not that hard. And you get a lot out of it. So sorry that I like was very enthusiastic. Ellen knows that I get enthusiastic.
Could you share your TikTok name with us just really quickly?
It's just Katie Welch at Katie Welch.
Perfect.
But like a lot of these, you know, kids, and I guess they're not kids. I don't know, maybe they're in their early 20s. To me, that feels like kids. The pressure, everyone just wants to know exactly what the path is. What am I supposed to do? What class am I supposed to take? What's this? And you're like, okay, hold on. You got to see like my path versus Sarah's path versus Ella's path. Like we're all different. So like that, if anything, take some grace and solace. Like you're like, okay, you know, I don't have to be this sort of major. Or I don't have to do this. And you're the first 5 years of your career, like they change so much, and that you're allowed to switch. Doesn't have to be in stone. And I don't know. So it's been really fun.
I totally agree. I think give yourself some grace. I love that you said that, because ultimately, to me, life is a story of chapters in a book, and you don't know what the next chapter is going to bring. I think in terms of Black women in beauty, I don't think this industry has fully unlocked its full potential because it has not unlocked the power of Black women. If we had more Black women in executive positions as brand owners, as founders, and on in every single function and aspect, then we would really see that potential push forward. And I think that's really the case in any industry, that ultimately, if you don't have full representation and just focusing on, you know, Black women, you know, as one group that is, you know, terribly underrepresented in so many ways, you're missing out. Because ultimately, you know, we as a community are able to bring a point of view, you know, a rich history and culture, and a leadership acumen and discipline that's really going to take any industry forward. And I think not having that representation in beauty is holding the industry back at large. So I think if we look at it that way as an industry, looking at untapped potential, then you're thinking about it in a very different way. I think in terms of my path, you know, I found this industry a little later. I started on Wall Street, and I went to Spelman College. And I remember at that time, you know, I was a kid from Brooklyn at Spelman and just eager to, you know, learn and get my degree and land one of those good jobs. And I remember on campus, there were lots of finance companies and consulting companies. And I, you know, ended up going into finance, but I didn't really understand or know what a career in beauty would be. I ended up at JP Morgan for 6 years. I learned a ton about, you know, client service and luxury, you know, in that environment. And then it was only after business school or during business school that I discovered beauty. And I have to say that I stand on the shoulders of, and I think this goes back to your point, Katie, about advocacy. I stand on the shoulders of so many people within this industry that have given me a shot. It doesn't, and this is where advocacy comes in, and mentorship and relationships. It really, you can have check all the boxes, education, experience, et cetera, the smarts, but if you don't have people that are willing to put their neck on the line for you, to push you into the room, then it really doesn't matter. And so that is what we all are called to do, to sort of find that person, find that high potential, and give them a shot, because I wouldn't be sitting where I am today if I did not stand on the shoulder of, you know, Spelman College, inroads, multiple executives, Black women, you know, white women, white men, who have given me a chance. And so that's really what it comes down to, is finding your unique path, finding your passion, and then bringing that passion, that know-how, and that joy to the table, and finding people who believe in you, who will push you forward. So I think that the future is bright for Black women in this industry. We need more of us in these key seats. We need better recruiting, you know, so ultimately that's something that we're working on in Tatcha. I've worked on it in other brands, of how do we make sure that These companies are on the campuses of historically Black colleges and universities, or if you're going to an Ivy League school, you're outreaching to the right affinity organizations that will connect you with the right communities. How do we make sure that you bring people in, but that they stay and they actually are able to work their way up through the ranks and their careers are nurtured? These are all things that have to come together. And also what your brand represents attracts talent. If your brand doesn't represent diversity and they don't see themselves, and why would they want to be in this industry if they don't see themselves represented in this industry? So that is a key piece of recruiting, both from a consumer perspective and also from, the employee and career side of it.
Wow. I just have to take a breath after that. Really exciting work that you all are doing. And again, I'm just so grateful that you're bringing others up with you, to have a seat at the table, to eat at the table, and really being, strong proponents of the expansion of Black women in beauty. And so I just want to thank you both for the lovely insight. This was a beautiful conversation, and I'm truly excited for you both, as well as the work that you're doing both inside and outside of Tatcha and Rare Beauty. Again, I'm a big fan of the Girls Education Program and the Impact Fund. So again, thank you ladies so much. And I'm going to hand it back over to Nanette.
Thank you.
Thank you.